Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't,
Wait a minute. Why are they laughing? Because what he said is the absolute truth. Hello friends, welcome to Look and Live. You are now here with Pastor James Devallon, and this is another reaction video I have for you tonight. Ooh, for the first time in this channel, Ben Shapiro. In this particular debate or discussion, however you want to refer to this one as, Ben Shapiro smacked down on Black Lives Matter. It has nothing to do with race. Boy, brace yourself for this one. I'm gonna check this one out for the first time. Yeah, Ben Shapiro is something else. But hey friends, open your mind, open your heart. We're about to be blown away. Without further ado, let's now get into the heart of this message.
Of things that I wanted to share with you. According to Pew Research, the net worth of white families in 2013 was $141,000. For black families, it was $11,000, even less than the $19,000 it was in 2007. According to economist Edward Wolf of the University of New York, excluding vehicles and other durables, the median black family worth is just $1,700, while 40% of black families have zero or negative wealth. White family worth, in terms of financial worth, is 69 times more than that of black families. Given this disparity, how can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't,
Wait a minute. Why are they laughing? Because what he said is the absolute truth. Let him finish.
And when you have a culture that doesn't, you know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
We can end this video right here. Have you noticed how change their behavior literally became as he began to lay out the facts? They, as soon as he spoke, they did this, right? They laugh. When he said it has nothing to do with numbers, it's all about culture, right? Like right here.
Driving factor in income inequality.
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture...
You see the behavior? All right, fine, they laugh.
Culture that doesn't...
But wait, by the time he's done laying out the facts...
Tremendous strides.
Look at their behavior.
Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
Did you get it? Ben Shapiro was telling the truth about the black Americans today. We are not marginalized nor hated because of the color of our skin, nor because of the system. Now, you can say from the past that is the case, and maybe, you know, a small fringe portion of our country may be still dealing with something like that. I'm not necessarily sure. I can't see the stats for that to even confirm it. The real issue that we are dealing with in the black culture is immorality. The real issue is the culture that we have prescribed to and live by, which is a sinful culture. The real issue in the black community, you hear it in the hip-hop music. That is what is destroying our culture today, and is destroying our homes. And that's just a fact.
So what do I think those riots are? I think the depravity, I think they're thugs, and I think if you really want to make a difference, Thurgood Marshall, who grew up just 2 blocks from there, did such a thing, who was a contemporary of Martin Luther King.
Yep.
Now I'd like to skip over to Dr. Seacrest.
I look at the Baltimore uprisings as more than just riots, right? I hate the idea when you say thugs and riots, right? White people riot as well. When y'all win Super Bowls 2 years in a row, y'all get off the hook. Don't make it seem like it's just Baltimore getting upset. So my 30-second answer is I feel the frustration of what's happening in the community, and I think it's a symptom. The uprisings are a symptom of a pressure that's been unaddressed for too long.
That's nonsense, okay? It simply is. Why do you guys keep on saying stuff like this? Why do we black people keep on making these excuses for evil doers? If this stuff is wrong, it's wrong. Let us stop justifying it. These rioters were thugs. Many of them were looting and shoppers and taking advantage of people, killing and murdering innocent individuals. Stop justifying their behavior as if this is just a symptoms. No. What about other nations that have symptoms? How comes they don't do as we do here when there is these social issues that we are facing? Enough of the justification for violence among taking place in black communities by black people. Stop doing that, because that's not gonna help us. It's gonna keep us in a state where we're gonna remain debased. We can never rise from this. This is not how you free people, by justifying them and giving them a pat on the back. You are leading them to hell.
I'm offended by the language of uprising applied to people who are breaking into other black people's stores and looting them.
Yeah.
This is a lack of values, and people who are destroying.
Amen. I didn't see this, by the way, guys. I'm just saying I'm not as smart as I can be. I just read my Bible and I can tell the difference. It's just a lack of morality. This is not uprising. This is not peaceful riot. What we saw on our television screen was just pure violence and wickedness and thugs. That's what we saw.
Private property, destroying cop cars, in an uprising against what exactly? Against the black police chief, against a mostly minority police force, against the black mayor, against the black president, against the black attorney general, against against a city council that is 9 of 15 are black and all 15 are elected Democrats. What is the uprising against? What is it seeking to achieve? I still don't see what exactly the riots are seeking to achieve. Bottom line is, this is all. It all could be boiled down to just act like a mensch. Act like a human being. Honestly, it's not useful to riot, it's not useful to break things, it's not useful to throw rocks at people. And the idea that we're supposed to sort of correlate your level of outrage.
I'm going to stick to the 30 seconds on
this.
The
last sentence. The idea that we're supposed to correlate your level of outrage with a certain level of justification. In other words, the more outraged you are and the more angry you are, the more justified you must be, is absolute nonsense.
It is.
Then
we're supposed to correlate your level of outrage.
30 seconds.
Bottom line is, this is all. It all could be boiled down to just act like a mensch. Act like a human being. Honestly, it's not useful to riot, it's not useful to break things, it's not useful to throw rocks at people. And the idea that we're supposed to sort of correlate your level of outrage.
I'm going to stick to the 30 seconds on this.
The last sentence. The idea that we're supposed to correlate your level of outrage with a certain level of justification. In other words, the more outraged you are and the more angry you are, the more justified you must be, is absolute nonsense.
Yes, it is. It is.
Then, since the issue of disparity has come up a number of times, when does disparity not indicate racism?
Level of effort.
Statistical disparity. For example, overwhelmingly men commit crimes more than women, but we don't say that the Justice Department is sexist. So, is there a line that you draw for yourself, or is there some way that you interpret statistical disparity and you determine that that is not a racial disparity, it's something else? Well, we can return to it. That's okay too. Ben, did you want to?
Yes. It's called evidence of racism. When there is no evidence of racism, it's probably not racism. When there is actual evidence of racism, it's probably racism. And the fact that everybody jumps from there's inequality and therefore there is inequity. Just because there's inequality does not mean there was inequity.
But there has to be racism. You can't say there's no racism.
Without evidence?
No. I'm just saying that I don't know which animal. Maybe
maybe
we're talking about
saying it's
dogs
racist.
or something. I'm talking about human beings, and I'm like, human beings are most likely going to have racial prejudices. I'm just so sorry. I'm just so sorry. I don't know. I don't come from. I come from planet Earth.
Charles, I want to ask you a question. So your default is that when there is no evidence, racism is the deciding factor. That is
No.
Sounds like that's exactly what you are saying, although you will deny the fact. That's kind of what you said. But nevertheless, let him finish.
No, I was not saying that. I'm just saying that you're going to have sexists, you're going to have racists, you're going to have all this stuff. I mean, I'm just saying that.
Welcome to Earth. Again, this is a fact. We live in a sinful world, and these things are going to exist regardless. But what we are dealing with in the black community is when we use racism as the reason why we are in a condition that we are. Therefore, that is false. Now, we can talk about politics, we can talk about bylaws, we can talk about systems and all that we agree and disagree with. I understand that. But what we hear over and over again in the black community today, racism. And I just can't keep looking at that as the only reason, and especially when the data is saying something different, right? And the stats are not adding up. So we gotta say there has to be a bigger problem. And I think Ben Shapiro said it earlier perfectly well. Culture. Sinful behaviors and immorality is what is at the root of our problem, not racism. Racism is an outgrowth of what is happening in the hearts of a sinful man, of course, and there is no justification of it. But culture.
I agree it exists, but the problem that I'm seeing, and this is the problem with the general conversation, is that there's no solution in simply saying there's racism out there. How does that solve anything? I mean, when you talk about there's institutional racism, what does that mean? Show me a law that is racist in intent, and we will agree. Show me a police officer who commits a racist act, like we saw in South Carolina, right, where a police officer shot a black man running away, and it was obviously unjustified, and I will agree. But you need the idea that you can craft a narrative based on no racism because it just must be somewhere out there in the ether, that doesn't solve problems for anybody and creates more problems for people because now they grow up in a milieu and an environment where they are told that every obstacle they face is from some shadowy, nameless, faceless group who is out to get them simply because of the color of their skin. They'll never succeed in that environment.
Amen. Did you get that? Right? So you create this boogeyman that you uphold before the eyes of the black man. Consistently, you're a victim. They're out to get you. Be aware of the system. You have to learn to survive. Yada, 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 yada. You keep on saying that long enough to them. They will eventually believe it and live in that mentality. And they themselves become self-destructive. This is what this pandering of racist talking points have done to the black community. It has not helped them at all. It has created bitter black individuals over time. So the more we keep using racism as a reason why we are in any particular condition as we are as blacks, or any other race could fit in this category as well, the more we do this, is the worse things are going to be.
You know, the weirdest thing is that actually in the black home, as I experienced it, really, there is no discussion of racism. Racism actually is a discussion that you actually come out and you face in the public because it's a real thing that you have to actually expect. I mean, if you're silly and you're foolish if you don't really think that that's going to be there and encountered in the real world. I'm sorry, this is just a fact of life. But if I'm at home and having dinner with my father or whatever, we don't go, oh my God, this society is so racist as I'm eating my steak, and you know what I mean? Oh goodness gracious! Oh, I can't bear it. My black skin's causing. I mean, no, we don't talk like that. Actually,
So if you don't do it at your home, why do you do it out in public? That's a good point he just made. And that even, I guess that confirms everything that Ben Shapiro is saying in essence. In other words, bruh. So that means at your own house, in your own leisure, you don't personally believe that there is a level of racists out there that are out to get you. But when you go out in public, you spread the idea in the minds of the youth, among your own people. And then when they act crazy, you said, oh.
Don't talk like that. We talk about, my God, Aunt, what's her name? Oh my God, she's got to take some pills because she's off the register. I mean, it's just like, these are the conversations we have at home. We don't have these kinds of conversations that we're having right now. At least
the reason you don't have that conversation is because you, in your heart of hearts, probably do not believe that racism is the root of the problem in this country for black people. Maybe.
my childhood, we didn't have them. And I'm watching the people I knew growing up in the black neighborhood, I didn't hear anybody really talking about race when we were at the dinner table. I mean, it just didn't really pop up, unless it was an issue, it was on television, but mostly it was about family and regular life.
But I disagree. I have to tell you, even in my culture, there is an underlying racism. And I know that the panel today, and especially with what's going on in America, we're talking about white on black. But I cannot wake up in the morning and not think about, intercultural racism, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Mexican enough. Why? Because I'm articulate and because I have straight hair and I can wear high heels. I don't have a tattoo on my neck. Yes, there is a huge problem with racism, no matter if you're light-skinned or dark-skinned. Absolutely, there is intercultural racism. It's absolutely underlying. And while you may not talk about it, your grandmother will have the favorite grandkid. If she's the lightest one with the good hair, that becomes the favorite grandkid in our culture. And that's, unfortunately, even within our own cultures, we tend to look upon, the color of each other's skin and how much education we have. And if my uncle has done time in jail, which, he has, then he becomes more Mexican than I am. What is up with that? I mean, it's sad, but it's true. It's absolutely true. It's like I can't eat spicy picante sauce, so I'm not Mexican enough. It's true, in every culture.
Well, I'm not sure if that's racism. It sounds like a degree of stereotype and a cultural differences that we have here. It seems a lot more misunderstanding or, I don't know, projection or anything like that. But yeah, you can deem it as racism as well. But it seems like this is happening in all cultures. There are some cultures today where if you speak this way, you don't talk that way, or if you dress this way, you don't dress that way, you can easily be looked upon as either, not, an insignificant one, I guess. Whether
it's Asian, black, Mexican, there is, while you may not have grown up talking about it over your, tea and toast.
I mean, in my family, if you're not a doctor or a lawyer, you're not Jewish.
You're not Jewish enough. It's true.
That part is true. This entire time, I've been trying to think about your initial question about disparities. Are they automatically tied to race? And at first, I think all of us were stumped because we were trying to think of the instances. I do agree that they are separate, that they don't necessarily correlate within itself. There are disparities. NAACP, we are the experts inside of the nation of bringing in the racial lens for all of the work. No, they're not necessarily going hand in hand, or they're not necessarily tied to each other. So that's how I would answer it. No, they don't have to go together. My job as a civil rights attorney is to be able to make you see race at every given opportunity, but no, it's not present in each and every single disparity.
To make you see race in every given opportunity, but there are times where you're trying to help people to see race. It doesn't actually exist. You end up creating it out of nowhere. That's part of the problem, lady.
To your second.
What are the standards? What are the standards, the difference? I mean, you said that you want people to see race in every single issue.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's present. Where it's present.
Okay,
so for instance,
what's your standard as to where it's present?
The average person who is experiencing racism can actually tell the difference. You kind of have that. And I think some of us, we have become so detectors of racism to the point where we are calling things that are racist, that are not racist. And sometimes I think things that are racist, we fail to realize what they are. And I think the extreme has happened. We have been too overly driven with this notion of trying to discover racism in all these different places. And now we end up having a country that calls everything racist. I heard somebody said recently the air was racist, or to be fat phobic is a form of racism, and to have an issue against transgenders or it's a form of racism. It just went to a point now where just about every single thing is considered racist. And to me, I think that's problematic. So we don't need to be helping people to see more of it. I think what we need to do is teaching people how to rise above that. And that's what we should be focusing on. It's not like you ought to go out there helping people to, for me, it's like I don't have to, being a Christian, I don't have to keep telling you where sin is, what sin is, and look for sin in this particular area and so on. While I should give you skills and tools, biblically speaking, where you can differentiate and have the proper discernment to do just that from the Bible. But giving you the tool, which is the armor of God, teaching you more about Christ is the solution. Teaching you the truth. Once you know what the truth is, you can actually easily expose the counterfeit. And I think if we were telling people what is truth in our culture today and helping them to think in a very positive victor mentality, we will have done a lot more in dealing with racism wherever it might be.
So what's my for the take something as simple as a if we're talking about a disparity, say men and women. My job would be to show what does that look like when you have women from a different group, communities of color. What does it look like when we're talking about a woman who's working or stuck in a minimum wage job, not as a starter, but for her career?
Right. No, I guess the
what
question
does that
I'm
look
asking
like?
more
And so we
specifically,
bring in the racial dynamic of
right,
how that affects.
No, I understand that.
That you know, you see how hard she's having a time to explain what racism is. If that is really her job, as she asserted, it is just, to me, it should be a lot easier for you to tell me where to spot racism. For you to use women and minimum wage and to say that the color of their skin might be the reason for them to be in that particular position and different than anybody else. I'm like, that's racism to you? Are you sure? You know, but it could be for some cases. But in that case, that's probably not what it is. There might be more to the story, but nevertheless.
What does that look like? And so we bring in the racial dynamic of
right,
how that affects.
No, I understand that. The question that I'm asking is, when do you decide something racist has occurred?
Good question.
Racist?
Yes. When can you decide that an act of racism has occurred? Because if you have just a statistical disparity, has an act of racism automatically occurred? That was David's basic question, I think.
Right. There's obviously there might be there will be a disparate impact on different groups of people. That doesn't necessarily mean, I think what you're saying is, doesn't necessarily mean something racist is going on, even though there's a racial impact. So the question was about where do you draw the line between something that might have a racial impact but is not inherently racist. Yeah. Let me move on.
This was great. What do you guys say? Comment below, put your thought and perspective below. I don't want to say too much to that. I think this video is long enough, but I will close up with this final word. What is really going on in our culture today and all the confusion is simply this: immorality. The earth is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have what? Transgressed the laws, changed the ordinances, and broken the everlasting covenant. There you have it. Number one, part of this problem is the church. Yeah, I said it. The church. The church is responsible for setting a positive example to the world. We are called to be the light of the world. And when the church doesn't reflect the light of the world acts crazy. And part of what we are seeing, even with all the racist stuff that's going on in our world today, part of the blame falls on the church. And secondly, there is our society who responds in a negative way as well. And hey, can you expect any less from them? But there's much more that could be said to that. I would say, what is your perspective on this? What do you think about this reaction video? What are your thoughts and comments on that as well? What do you think about, what do you like about Ben Shapiro? He is way too much, and I love his approach. Too smart. But I'll end it right here. How about you like and subscribe to the page? Click the bell icon for more of my notification upload. Comment below, put your recommendation below, and share your thought and perspective with me. Until next time, and as always, remember to look unto Jesus, to live by faith. Have a good one. Bye.